within my memory.
Something that we can eat that will repel them from our bodies.
That's what garlic.
Somebody had heard said buttermilk.
I heard garlic.
Really? You drank buttermilk?
Garlic? Yeah, there was a guy that was telling me that, yeah.
I could totally eat some
I was always
garlic.
paying attention to it, and I'd always look at the doorknob, and there was always one there,
Garlic?
always.
Have you noticed how expensive garlic's becoming?
So if you're kind of in a wooded area,
Oh, don't,
It's
touch
a
stuff
cherry.
from China, there's a lot of.
It hasn't been there. It's all Mexico.
Oh,
Last
yeah.
couple of years it's been Mexico.
I've heard that it's mostly from China, unless you look at the
I've
label.
had
Yeah.
3 tick bites,
I
but
always
they were
look at the
all
labels.
big ticks,
Hard not to
no
buy stuff from
issues.
China.
Yeah.
Carlos had about
I don't
7,
know if I can.
but they were all big too.
If you don't, you get one that.
Do dogs? Yeah.
He doesn't.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I should go get it tested. But he gets more of those black
Go to
flies.
Home Centuries.
Hmm? Google it.
No.
Cause you're not.
My very favorite neighborhood solo farm stand has been cutting back a bunch this year. And I don't know why I haven't caught her in the yard. But
Did
it's
you go get tested?
messing with my nutrition.
So I got
Big
it.
tested.
You go to Home Centuries, Stacy Burke. Yeah.
Oh, okay, then they got you.
Helps you back. My son had one.
She's saying it was supposed to do it.
Say it louder for the camera, Green.
That's okay, I've got my card, I've got my card. I've got both my cards. I'm a card carrying dope addict. I am a card carrying dope addict. They want me to wash their glasses on the way out.
Thank you very much.
Are we here Thursday or outside?
We're gonna be here Thursday.
I'll take one,
Then, oh,
Then I'm
then,
gonna
oh,
watch.
then I'll talk to them Thursday.
the whole thing.
Because I haven't been able to do the outdoors ones.
I'm not here this Thursday.
But she'll be there, right?
It's better,
I think
Oh, is it?
it's Madison
Yeah, it's
Thursday.
better.
Madison's here.
Yes, she will.
Okay.
because you
Thank
can't
you.
see
I'll
the
introduce
small
myself
details
to
when
you.
you're doing it very well. You can't tell what I'm sure you can.
It's a street.
And they went.
So once you see it here, then you really haven't seen anything.
My name is Ryan. And? I'm a card carrying. All right. It's great.
Oh, since you all are so tick savvy, what is this thing about keeping your grass cut short? Does that really make a difference? It shouldn't. Thank you.
Having lots of leaves in your yard, yeah, makes a difference.
Leaves?
Get rid of them. Because that's where they go for the winter, and then they survive.
I'm not here late enough to get my leaves up. Shoot.
We just did it for, that's what it takes.
You bet, we'll see you.
Cyan.
Get some chickens. Then they're gone.
They eat ticks.
They'll eat them all.
And then goats for
Garlic.
goats for your weeds, chickens for your ticks.
Maybe some frogs too, I don't know.
Just for good measure.
If you want to find out if your yard has a lot of them, if you do is you drag a white towel, a terry cloth, across your lawn, and they'll pick them up.
That's a good tip.
Can they go to the what?
Why? Yeah, because then you'll see the ticks on the.
When we lived in Harpswell, I couldn't go from the car to the house. I'd pick up 2 or 3 ticks. I haven't had a single tick all summer. We're in friendship.
Knock on wood when you say that.
I know. I should say I haven't noticed ticks. I got that brown moldy caterpillar evilness.
Just need a cold winter.
Killing frost.
We've got a lot of deer that come in our yard, so we don't like to go in deer.
Just test sort of things for false negatives. Aren't most of those tests known for false negatives?
There's a certain kind of test they do tick for Lyme disease, and it comes back false negative.
False negative all the time. Yeah, that's what I
Well,
heard.
not all of them, but a lot.
She's had
And then if you don't, if you get tested and enough time hasn't passed to come back negative, it's just
I mean, last year she was doing
Need
all kinds of
California.
tests for that, so she's aware. But she keeps the house.
That's what it's called?
I believe so.
I told her she likes feeding the deer and everything.
Everyone should take up hunting and go shoot all the deer. Some problem.
I know.
It's my husband's solution.
She knows.
Just kill.
You can leave it in the store, she can't make them drink.
I've seen more porcupine roadkill this week.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. It's like they all have bad.
You just, she says, oh, I'll take a look at it. I thought she'd be here in a minute.
Who?
Lost.
Oh.
She's not feeling right tonight. But she thought she'd love to come and say, she can't.
What is that?
Oh, it's a
line?
ripple in the dress. It's got layers.
Oh,
It's a different
it's a seed.
color in it.
I see it. It's a shiny bit. Like a little ribbon.
It's a ribbon with 3 layers of.
Each chair has a ribbon on the edge.
There you go.
Doesn't kill her. And if you have a really cold winter, but you don't have a lot of snow and stuff, then that would probably kill them. If you have a lot of snow, the snow insulates it and they survive.
So I have to wish you all a really hard winter.
Please. A week or 2 of sub-zero.
The only thing to do is if you have to move.
I lived down here for 25 years. We used to get 20 below every year for 2 weeks in February.
They don't get that is because, I mean, it is cold. Yeah. Been killing off the moose population. There's no being, you walk around with 100,000 ticks on it.
Yeah, I had ice this winter.
Kills them.
Kept melting in snow and freezing again.
It was a pretty cold winter, actually. We had a lot of.
My God, if I was
a lot of snow, which was the problem here, they live under exploding states.
It's just something.
This is what you'd call shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for answering my duh question. That's what you get for letting beginners in the class. I almost forgot to ask a question I thought of this week about photography distortion. Do higher end cameras distort less?
I wouldn't have a clue. All I know is you really should.
Phones distort a lot.
That's a 4K, isn't it?
This?
Not?
I don't
I'm
think
just
so.
asking about like regular.
No, this isn't a very
cameras.
high-end camera.
I think the digital cameras are better now than the regular cameras.
Mhm. And they should distort less than the phone camera.
Yes.
I think the larger the
Your camera
lens
should be better than your camera.
distorts the
Yeah.
least, and phones have a tiny little lens. So.
Wide angle lens will distort. You get really close, then pulls everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on your phone, you have a landscape and a portrait mode, and I don't know which one distorts more.
And a panorama, that one distorts
Well, yeah.
badly.
And my camera's got an idiot mode, which is what I'm on most of the time.
I never used the portrait part of the feature because
Yeah, I
it
think
changes the colors too much.
I can't remember what I had mine on.
Mine's set for idiot. But I have a digital camera and I wonder if I should use it more.
I think digital gives you a better image
Better than what?
than your cell phone.
Some distortion is really obvious to me, but some I just can't tell. You know, some people can look at a painting and say, well, that was painted from a photograph. I don't have that eye.
that's too wet to begin with. All right, I guess I'll stop there.
Ron, what was that green that you just put on her arm?
Right here?
Dark, yes. Was that
I think it was my permanent green light.
with the lizard? Did you?
It was in
did
a
you darken
pile
it
that
down?
he had.
It was in a whole bunch of stuff, so I don't have a clue what's in it. Yeah.
Okay.
And all I was doing was just knocking it down just to start, getting this hand coming out. I was just trying to get some of the anatomy going, not really too concerned about with each individual finger at this point. I'm just trying to get it to look like there's light hitting it and shadow and whatever. I still need to figure out the sleeve and how that's going to go in there. Then I got to figure out just how light I want the background compared to the shirt and all that stuff. So I'm just playing around with it. And I was playing around with the design of the outline too, because that has to be interesting. And this is a bit of a bore here. That's too bulky, but it's too wet for me to do anything with it now. I'll go in and chisel that. Like that's too much of a big bump right there. I don't like it. So I'd probably break that into two or something. So that's where you start designing it. Now I start looking at this line here, and I'll play around with it too. I think this is a bit of a bore. I'm going to break this out a little bit too. So I'll just play around because the edges are really, really important to have them look good. Have a really good line around it. So anyway, it's tedious. I've brought it up, further than it was a couple hours ago. You can see how I dealt with the hair. I think the hair is more effective than it was when I came in. So, and I've got the shirt at least in play, playing around with colors and stuff. And the design, I want the design to be in there, but I don't want it to be hugely prominent because the flower has to come ahead of everything in there. So does her hands. So I got to play around with that. So that's the reason why the drawing, the design of that shirt is sort of ebbing and flowing a little bit. So I'll put it in a little bit harsh, then I'll knock it down and keep going back and forth until it reads. But I want that hand to come way, way away from that shirt. And if I make the shirt too hard edged in there, then it won't. So, and again, I'm still not sure about the background color. I'm kind of liking this better than this and better than that, but I'm still not convinced that it's where I want to be yet, and it doesn't really matter. And that's the reason why I'm not covering the whole thing. I kind of like to have a visual memory of all my at this point, my 3 different decisions.
But the values are about where you want it.
It's getting closer. Yeah, it's really, I think the lighter I made this, it really brought a nice glow to her face.
And I like that it's greener, makes the hair stand out.
Yeah, yep. And also the light that I'm painting in her face, the light that's happening out here makes it seems like it would be that type of reflected light in her face with this out here. So I think that and this are working together quite well. And so you got to think about that too. I mean, if I painted her face without thinking about the background, there's a chance she'll look like she's a cutout and not part of the lighting situation that's happening that she's standing in. So you have to be aware of that.
Fair.
Yeah. So anyway, and the other thing that's going to really be kind of interesting is when I start pulling out these individual blades of grass, which will be really crisp, which will really make her go back. Anyway,